For centuries, the ancient masters guarded a powerful secret. There is a process capable of transforming everything around you and within you. A knowledge so deep that it was disguised as legend, hidden in symbols, protected from the eyes of those who weren't ready to see. This process is called alchemy. But forget everything you've been told about turning metals into gold. True alchemy is much bigger than that, and it's happening right now, inside you. And this video didn't show up by accident. It's the sign you've been looking for, because your awakening has already begun. You feel it, even if you can't explain it. Small synchronicities, thoughts that never existed before, a silent restlessness that makes you question everything that once seemed certain. But what does it all mean? It means the spark has been lit, that alchemy is already at work, shaping your reality from the inside out. Now, there's just one question left. Are you ready to understand this process? And more importantly, to learn how to use it? If so, stay until the end, because after this, nothing will ever be the same. You've probably heard that ancient alchemists sought to transform lead into gold, but what if I told you it was never really about metals? That was the greatest distraction in history. While the world believed that alchemy was just a laboratory experiment, the true initiates knew that real transmutation happens within the human being. It's not about physical gold, it's about something far more valuable, the awakening of consciousness. Occult masters have always spoken of the great work, a subtle yet powerful process that dissolves everything inessential and reveals your true essence. But to understand this, you first need to know where it all begins. The prima materia. Ancient texts describe prima materia as the original substance of everything that exists, the starting point of creation. But what does that mean in practice? It means that within you there is something pure, a raw potential waiting to be refined, something that has been buried under layers of fear, conditioning, and beliefs imposed by the world around you. And that's why alchemy is a process of purification. Before it becomes gold, lead must be reduced to its purest state. And that doesn't happen with a simple touch. The material must be subjected to fire, dissolved, disintegrated until everything impure is eliminated. Only then can what remains be elevated to its most refined form, and the same thing happens to you. Since the moment you were born, you've been conditioned to believe that you are just a body, an identity, a collection of memories and titles. But none of that is you. Inner alchemy begins when you start asking yourself, what in me is real, and what is just a reflection of what I was taught to be? This process can be brutal. It shatters illusions, breaks certainties, and demands courage. But every great transformation passes through chaos before finding order. The ancients called this journey the quest for the philosopher's stone, but the truth is, this stone is not something you find outside of yourself. It is within you, waiting to be discovered. And the first step is fire. The fire that burns away what is not essential. The fire that reveals what has always been hidden. The fire of transmutation. The great work, the journey of transformation. Now that the truth has been revealed, a new process begins. And this process has a name: the great work. The ancient alchemists knew that transformation doesn't happen in a single instant. It unfolds in stages, each one deeper than the last. Like a cycle of death and rebirth, each phase of internal alchemy destroys what no longer serves to make space for what is emerging. The first stage is calcination. Fire burns away impurities, reducing everything to its essence. Here, illusion begins to crumble. The masks fall. The ego resists, trying to cling to what it knows, but the process is relentless. It burns away limiting beliefs, ancient fears, emotional patterns that have repeated for lifetimes. And when this fire has done its work, nothing remains but raw truth. Then comes dissolution. What's left after the burning dissolves, like a river carrying away what can no longer stay. This is the moment when everything seems to fall apart. Certainties vanish. The old identity dissolves. But this dissolution is not the end. It's just space being cleared for something new to emerge. And then, coagulation. What was once fluid begins to take form again, but in a different way. Purer, more elevated. This is rebirth, the reconstruction of the self, now free from the burdens it once carried. But the process doesn't stop there. With each cycle, a new level of transformation unfolds. Deeper layers are accessed. The lead of the mind and heart is continuously purified until the inner gold finally shines without any impurities. The alchemists called this process the Magnum Opus, the great work. But it was never just a metaphor. It is real, happening within you right now. As you've seen, fire is an essential element for the great work to function. But why is it so important? Fire is the active principle of creation and transformation. It doesn't just change what it touches. It awakens, accelerates, propels. In spirituality, fire is spirit in motion. It is the force that dissolves everything rigid, burns away illusions, and illuminates what was once hidden. If there is one symbol that represents the awakening of consciousness, that symbol is fire. Not because it destroys, but because it reveals. It consumes everything that has already served its purpose and makes space for what needs to emerge. In spiritual tradition, fire is associated with enlightenment, purification, and vital energy. It is the flame that rises up the spine when a human being awakens to their true nature. It is the warmth in the hearts of those who find a higher purpose. And it is the fire that burns away everything that is not true, everything that prevents the soul from expanding. But fire cannot be controlled. You can try to hold it, shape it, direct it, but in the end, it will follow its own path. That's because it doesn't obey external rules. It only responds to the necessity of transformation. Let me share a short story with you that illustrates what we are learning. There was once a traveler who spent years searching for a spiritual master who could teach him the secret of enlightenment. He crossed deserts, climbed mountains, and knocked on the doors of hidden temples, but no answer ever satisfied him. Until one day, he arrived at a village where everyone spoke of an old hermit who lived alone in the forest. Determined to get his answer, the traveler went looking for the master. When he finally found him, he saw that the old man was sitting in front of a fire, watching the flames dance in the wind. "Master," the traveler said, "I have spent my entire life searching for the truth. Can you teach me the path to enlightenment?" The master didn't answer. He simply pointed to the fire. Confused, the traveler insisted, "I've heard of metaphors and symbols before, but I need something real, something I can follow." The master looked at him and, without taking his eyes off the flame, said, "Enlightenment is like fire." The traveler frowned. "What do you mean?" The master picked up a dry branch and placed it in the flames. Within seconds, the fire consumed it completely. "Look," he said, "fire doesn't ask for permission to burn. It simply does. If there is something that can be consumed, it consumes. If there is something that cannot, it simply illuminates." The traveler watched the fire in silence. If you seek enlightenment, you must first understand the fire within you. It burns away what is not real, what does not belong to your essence. It cannot be held, it cannot be possessed, but it can be felt. The master picked up another branch, lit its tip, and handed it to the traveler. If you want to keep the fire burning, you must feed the flame. But if you're not careful, it may consume everything you believe yourself to be. The traveler stood there, holding the burning branch, as understanding began to take shape within him. Enlightenment was not something he could find. It was something that would burn inside him until everything that was not truth disappeared. In spirituality, fire represents this state of constant transformation. It is not static. It moves, dances, grows, and spreads. It is the driving force of the spirit toward expansion. When we feel something burning inside us, whether it's a restlessness, a calling for something greater, or even the discomfort of change, it is the fire of consciousness touching us, pushing us into a new stage. But few allow this flame to grow. Many try to put it out, run from it, resist its action. The problem is that ignoring the fire doesn't make it disappear. It will remain there, waiting for the moment to burn what needs to be burned. Transmutation and evolution, the alchemy of consciousness. But fire alone is not the end of the process. It only initiates transmutation. Because the true purpose of alchemy is not destruction, it is evolution. The transmutation of lead into gold was never just a metaphor for the alchemist's laboratory. It is a code, a map for the awakening of consciousness. Lead represents the raw, dense state, limited by the illusion of matter. Gold is the elevated consciousness, purified, free from the chains of the material world. This is the essence of the alchemy of consciousness. Every human being is born as lead, a heavy, impure metal, weighed down by layers of conditioning, limiting beliefs, repetitive patterns inherited from society, family, and past experiences. But within that lead, something is hidden. Something that the eyes cannot see, but has always been there. Spiritual evolution does not happen through knowledge alone. It happens when consciousness goes through the process of purification, just like metal in the forge. And this purification comes in the form of challenges, trials, moments of breaking down. Just as fire refines metals, difficulties burn away illusions, attachments, and constructed identities that are not real. The greater the resistance, the more intense the fire must be. Some people try to run from this process, clinging to what is familiar, even if it means staying trapped in cycles of pain and suffering. But those who accept the call of transmutation begin to notice something extraordinary. Every external transformation reflects an internal transformation. What once seemed like an obstacle reveals itself as a gateway. What seemed like an end is in truth a new beginning. Spiritual evolution is this constant movement from matter to spirit, from darkness to light. But there is something even deeper in all of this. Alchemy is not just about transformation. At its most hidden level, it is an act of salvation. Few people know this, but the ancient initiates understood transmutation as a rescue of the soul, not a rescue performed by an external force, but one carried out by ourselves as we free ourselves from the chains of illusion. This is the secret that has been hidden for centuries. Throughout history, human consciousness has sunk deeper and deeper into matter, forgetting its true origin. We have created invisible prisons made of beliefs, fear, and an endless search for things that never truly fill the inner void. The world has taught us that we are only bodies, that life is limited to what we can see and touch. But the alchemists knew that this was the greatest illusion of all. True alchemy is the liberation of the spirit trapped in matter. The ancients called this the great work of salvation, and this concept can be found in various spiritual traditions around the world. In esoteric Christianity, this idea manifests as Christ consciousness. Christ, as an archetype, represents the awakening of the divine spark within every human being. He descends into matter, enters the dream of creation, and awakens those who are still asleep. He does not save from the outside in, but from the inside out, igniting the flame of awakening in those who are ready. In Hermetic teachings, this process is described as the ascension of the soul, the exit from a state of ignorance and the reconnection with the source. A journey back to the original state, where the human being is no longer a slave to the illusions of the world, but a master of their own existence. The philosophical gold of alchemy is not a metal. It is the redemption of the spirit, the liberation of the mind from the invisible chains that keep it imprisoned, the end of the cycle of unconsciousness and the beginning of a fully awakened life, where matter is no longer a burden, but a vehicle for the expression of inner light. If transmutation has already begun within you, it means your soul is calling back what has always belonged to you. But the transmutation of the soul is not a new concept. This knowledge has crossed centuries, hidden between the lines of ancient texts, protected by the few who understood its true meaning. Alchemy did not originate in one single place, nor does it belong to just one tradition. It is as old as humanity itself, and as universal as the search for awakening. The word alchemy has its roots in the Arabic alchemia, but its origin is intertwined with something even more ancient. Chem, the old name for Egypt, known as the Black Land. a name that was not just a reference to the fertile soil along the Nile, but also to the great mystery surrounding this civilization. In Egypt, alchemy was called the black art, not in a negative sense, but because it was connected to the cycle of death and rebirth. The Egyptian priests understood that everything had to go through a process of dissolution before it could be recreated. The very act of mummifying bodies was an attempt to eternalize matter and transcend it. But true alchemy did not take place in the temple of Anubis. It happened within the consciousness of those who underwent the rites of initiation. Those who passed the spiritual trials understood a profound secret. The body is a reflection of the soul, and physical transformation is nothing more than a mirror of inner transformation. This knowledge traveled the world, taking different forms depending on each civilization. In the East, alchemy followed another path. The ancient masters of India and China realized that true transmutation was not just in external elements, but in the vital energy circulating through the human body. This understanding gave rise to the practice of Kundalini, the serpent of fire sleeping at the base of the spine, which, when awakened, transmutes consciousness to a higher level. The quest for immortality was also part of this knowledge, but it was not the immortality of the physical body that true alchemists sought. It was the immortality of consciousness. The ancient Taoists prepared elixirs that not only strengthened the body, but activated altered states of perception, allowing the spirit to transcend the barriers of the material world. But what few have realized throughout history is that, despite the differences between traditions, they all shared the same hidden truth. The visible world is a reflection of the invisible world, and the transformation of matter is a reflection of the transformation of consciousness. This was not just philosophy. It was a sacred science, a living knowledge that transcended generations, adapting to different cultures while preserving its essence. Quintessence, the lost link between spirit and matter. There was something beyond the transmutation of metals, beyond Hermetic rituals and hidden formulas. Something that couldn't be touched, weighed, or measured. The ancient alchemists called it the quintessence. While the four elements, earth, water, air, and fire, represented the material aspects of existence, the quintessence was what transcended them all, the lost link between spirit and matter. The fifth element. Unlike the others, which directly interact with the physical world, the quintessence operates on a more subtle level. It is the invisible structure that connects all things, the primordial substance through which consciousness manifests. In spiritual practice, this concept is present in everything involving energetic transformation. From ancient alchemical rituals to modern quantum physics, the core idea remains the same. Consciousness shapes reality. But what few understand is that this force does not act on its own. It needs to be directed. The quintessence responds to intention. This is the secret behind water programming, manifestation, and energy healing. When an alchemist works with this invisible substance, they are not manipulating something physical, they are interacting with a living field of intelligence that responds to the frequency of the mind and heart. This is the foundation of healing processes, spiritual activations, and transformational phenomena that defy traditional logic. Because what we call reality is not fixed. It shifts according to the vibration of the one who perceives it. And that's why alchemy never disappeared. It simply adapted. The knowledge that was once passed down through scrolls and codices now manifests in different ways. Today, we see its presence in energy therapies, meditation, and the science of vibration. In practices that, even with modern names, operate under the same ancient principles. The elixirs once prepared in alchemical laboratories are now natural formulas that balance body and mind. The ancient processes of internal transmutation are now teachings on emotional intelligence and spiritual healing. The purification work once done in sacred temples now takes place in the individual journeys of every seeker. But the goal remains the same, the transmutation of consciousness. True alchemy is not just in books, symbols, or rituals. It is in every choice, every thought, every emotion transmuted. It is in the way a person takes their pain and transforms it into wisdom. in how they dissolve fear and refine it into courage. In the moment, they realize they are not prisoners of matter, but creators of their own reality. The quintessence is still alive, pulsing in everything that exists. And alchemy, far from being a knowledge lost in time, is still happening right now, within everyone who dares to awaken. But before you go, something very important awaits you. I've prepared a special video to dive even deeper into everything we've talked about here. In it, I'll show you how to apply this knowledge to your life in a real and practical way. So don't leave just yet. Click on the video appearing on the screen now, and I'll meet you there. See you on the other side.